Not gonna lie, if it were possible and Atomic Blonde took place in modern day, I would absolutely kill for John Wick Chapter 3 to have Lorraine Broughton in it and have her and John Wick go head to head, because we finally have an action hero that can take on John Wick. And, well, here we have Atomic Blonde. So when I first heard of Atomic Blonde, saw the trailers and everything, I automatically thought of John Wick, as you would, because it's one of the directors of John Wick. You know, it seems like it would be a very similar film to John Wick. But what surprised me and what made me like this film a lot more than, you know, because I expected this movie would be great, but what made me like it even more than I thought I might is the fact that it really distances itself from John Wick. It has the 80s vibe, it's got the colour palette, it's got the music, the soundtrack is incredible. But at the same time, it's not really a full on action film, it's more of a spy thriller, but with really great action. So, like, one of the action scenes in this film, it's one of the best action scenes I have seen this decade, but at the same time, it doesn't rely heavily on the action all the time. Which I guess was a bonus, because there are things to really like about this film. So before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about the plot of Atomic Blonde. It follows Charlize Theron's character Lorraine Broughton, who is brought in for questioning about the death of someone who was connected to their sort of spy ring, and has this list that they're going to leak out that exposes everyone in MI6. So she's sent to Berlin to find this list with the help of James McAvoy's character, and they have to go on this crazy adventure around Berlin to get this one list back. So automatically it sounds like a very simple film, and the plot is very simple. It doesn't really, you know, it's not complicated, it's not that hard to follow, but there are a lot of things that happen in this film. So if you aren't really following the plot, you know, if you are switched off, there are things you're going to miss. But at the same time, it's not a film that you have to, you know, there are plot twists and there are twists and turns, including one with James McAvoy's character. Okay, let's start off. James McAvoy's absolutely great in this film. Charlize Theron's great, James McAvoy's great. They're always great in the films I see them in, but James McAvoy stood out because it's easy for a film like this where the main action hero is the star. Of course, Charlize Theron is the star, and I am more than happy that she is the star. But it's hard to have another character stand out. But James McAvoy in this, automatically, his very first scene is introduced. He's this crazy mental guy, and I was like, okay, I already love him. But you know, when things are going down with his character, there are twists and turns that happens, and it's going to be one of two things. You're either going to see it coming from a mile away with his character, or you're not going to see it at all. Unfortunately, I was one of the people that saw it coming from a mile away. Didn't take away from it. It was still quite clever the way they did it, but I knew it was going to happen. But if you don't know it's going to happen, and you don't know what the twist of his character is, it'll be a pleasant surprise, I'm sure. Well, I'm not going to talk too much about it. I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, as well as that, we have John Goodman, who's really good in this film, Toby Jones, Sophia Boutella. At first, I thought she felt like a really pointless character. I mean, she has some really good scenes with Charlize Theron. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen this film. But at first, I thought she was a bit of a pointless character, but she does play into the film quite a lot more later on. You've got Eddie Marsan. So you've got some really good actors in this film, as well as Charlize Theron. But let's talk about the action for a second. Oh my god, it was incredible. So, like, one of the first scenes is this action scene. The opening sequence is an action scene to New Order's Blue Monday, and already I was like, I love the soundtrack, I love the action, I love what's happening, I love this colour palette, I'm going to really dig this movie. And throughout, when they scatter these action scenes in, they're really good. I mean, sometimes the movie does feel like a bit of a mess, and it does feel a bit overlong. I'm not going to lie about that. There are certain things that really drag, and you're watching it thinking, this is still happening, we're still at this moment of the film, and then a scene will happen, and you'll think, I'm sure I've seen this already, but then an action scene will happen that will take you completely out of it, and you'll be like, oh shit, this is really great. I'm not saying the movie's only good for the action, I'm just saying when the action happens, it really happens. So yeah, we've got that first car chase sequence that we've seen in the trailer, when Lorraine first meets James McAvoy's character. But the best action scene in this whole film, and probably one of my favourite action scenes of this decade, it was awesome. It takes place on like this stairwell in this building, and then all of a sudden they fly into this room and just punches are happening. And what I really liked about the action in this film and that specific scene was it felt so realistic. It's very brutal, you know. It's very close. You see things, you see blood splattering on walls. And a lot of films you don't really see that. It's just sort of like, hey, look, this guy got shot and he has a bullet in his head. But no, you see blood splattering everywhere. But then there's this hand-to-hand combat scene with Charlize Theron's character and another character, and they're punching each other, and by the end of it, they are absolutely exhausted. They're struggling to stand up, you know. And when I watched it, I was thinking, we don't see this a lot in action films. This dude's clearly, every time he's punched, you feel the pain. Every time she's punched, you feel the pain, because they really convey it well. And then when they're getting up and falling over and struggling and stuff, you're thinking, this is really realistic for an action film like this, and I wouldn't have expected it from something called Atomic Blonde, because this is based off of a graphic novel, and being based off a graphic novel, it's very easy to go into unrealistic comic book action, and sometimes it does do that, like that one scene you've seen in the trailer where she jumps from this building with like a hose attached to this guy, and he comes into the fence, she just swings into this door. Yeah, that's more of the unrealistic comic book action. But when you've got these hand-to-hand combat scenes and these close-range fighting scenes, you're thinking, this is really great. And I really appreciated that something like that would happen in this film, because it made it feel more real, and it made it feel like more of an action film than a cartoon or a comic book. So that was really awesome. I really got to give props for that. So yeah, scattered throughout, like I said, New Monday, you got a bit of, I'm pretty sure there was a bit of George Michael thrown in there, you know. You got like everything you can think of from the 80s for an 80s soundtrack, with the twists and turns that they throw in. When it ended, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, when it ends, you're going to think that that's one ending and then there's another ending. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I thought it had ended and then something else happened, and that's what I mean by the movie dragged on a little too long. Because I kind of felt that was a little unnecessary, because it removes sort of all mystery from the film. So my biggest gripe is that ending, and the fact that I feel like it did drag on just a little bit too much. But other than that, I don't think you're going to find a more fun, kick-ass time at the cinema than Atomic Blonde. Loved Charlize Theron in it. I have fallen in love with her now. She's incredible. I loved every aspect of the action that they'd thrown in there. I thought the plot was interesting at times, even though it's a bit cliche and a bit something you've seen before. But I didn't really mind, because I had an absolute blast watching Atomic Blonde, and I definitely recommend people go see it, because it's probably the best movie out at the moment, or at least movie of this week. Although it is only Thursday, and we do have a couple of movies coming out tomorrow, but I can't imagine Annabelle Creation will take over Atomic Blonde in terms of greatness. So, I don't know, we'll see. I'm watching it on Saturday, so we'll see what happens. But that's my take on Atomic Blonde. So have you seen Atomic Blonde? If you have, let me know what you thought about it. Comment below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.